Okay, we will call to order our regular meeting of council and start by recognizing that we are gathering today on the unceded traditional territories of the Sechot and Hoopachesit First Nations. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items from councillors? Okay, sorry, Councillor Solta.
Madam Mayor, I would like to discuss our lights. I don't know how you want to classify it as, and our city lights, street lights.
Okay, we can add that under new business, item M3. Okay, and any late items from our corporate officer? Oh, sorry, Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 3 notices of motion that I wish to present, and perhaps they could be in new business, I guess. So not for debate today, but just for information.
Wonderful. We'll add M4, 5, and 6 as well, notices. Okay. And any late items from our corporate officer?
Just that piece of correspondence to add regarding the pass.
Oh, okay. Where are we adding that correspondence for information? Okay, so that will be under J. Okay. With that, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda as amended? Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. And we have minutes from the special meeting held at 9:30 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on December 12th, 2022. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we'll go to public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council, and we can take up to 4 speakers for 3 minutes each. Would anyone like to speak today? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We have no delegations today, so on to unfinished business. And item number 1 is the 2022 resolutions tracking summary.
All right, so before you, we just have an updated 2022 tracking summary. So again, for information, this is just a document that basically compiles all the ongoing resolutions of council and its status. So we have a few outstanding items that are highlighted in yellow. And yeah, moving forward, I believe we do these quarterly updates. This one just kind of wraps up 2022 and sets us up for the new year.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noted R22-166 is the resolution with regards to the temporary operating permit for the Bread of Life shelter beds. And I noted that when it was passed, there were conditions imposed. And it's not the only one to have conditions imposed on it. There seems to be a number of resolutions with conditions. But it shows up in yellow still, I think. And I'm not sure how council becomes informed whether or not conditions have been fulfilled. Or do we just assume so because the permit has been issued?
Tim, are you able to speak to that?
Madam Mayor, I'm looking at R22166, is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm looking online, and it's not highlighted in yellow. What was the specific, do you want to speak about this specifically, or in general terms, how is council updated?
Oh, sorry. Stand corrected. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I misspoke. It's not in yellow. It was differently under target date. There was no target date. It was subject to conditions, and the status remains empty. Although certainly from just observation in daily life in Port Alberni, it would appear to be fulfilled. So so then that prompts the question: is how is council informed when there are conditions attached to resolutions? How those conditions, when those conditions are fulfilled, how they are fulfilled, or do we just assume that they're fulfilled?
Tim, maybe you or Danielle could speak generally to that.
I think it's situational. In this case, I know that there was an outstanding condition that we've just been working on this past week, and in general, we don't come back to council to say this one's complete. But as the Director of Corporate Services said earlier, this will be a quarterly, going forward, we intend this to be a quarterly update. If, it might be worthwhile when an issue is directed by council, if you want to be kept apprised of the progress on that, to tell direct staff that accordingly at that time, to say, you know, please come back and keep us posted on this, or something to that effect.
Okay, thank you for that.
Does that work for you?
Other questions on the tracking summary? Councillor Solda.
Just a quick question, Madam Mayor. I'm just kind of curious to know, all the ones that, on the status bar, part of it, that are completed, are we going to knock them off now? We're not going to keep seeing these things on, or just the ones that are completed? Pardon? No, the ones that are completed, though. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, basically you won't see these anymore. We'll be starting a new 2023 one. So unless there's outstanding items, the completed ones will be just wiped away. Well, not wiped away, but filed away.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, just want to highlight how many resolutions there were last year, a significant amount of work, and how many of them are completed. So just want to recognize all the work that staff has done to get us to that point, because it is quite significant. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to comment on Resolution 22-256. It was a resolution I had introduced with regards to a report on the UNDRIP, and I note that it's for a report sometime in January or February. I know it's January, so I look forward to February and receiving that report.
Thank you. And this report is just for council information, so unless there's any other questions. Okay. No, that's great. Okay, then staff reports. Item number 1 is accounts. Councillor Solda.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated January 9th, 2023 be received and checks numbered 151917 to 152037, inclusive, in payment of accounts totaling $1,667.74 be approved.
Seconded by Councillor Patola. Any questions or comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And item number 2, freedom of the municipality policy. Danielle.
Right, through you, Madam Mayor. This is a policy that basically follows in line with the legislation. The legislation doesn't require a policy, but it does permit council to issue freedom of the municipality at unanimous discretion for nominees. The policy essentially just outlines what was currently basically the practice for awarding them, but it also outlines some eligibility criteria and considerations for council when looking at awarding this. Just for consistency's sake and just making sure that we're following some sort of template that the public can rely on going forward. As you can see in the background, we have been awarding this since 1959. It was as far back as I could go to find recipients, and again, it just formalizes a process, willing to take any recommendations, of course, on any changes, since the process is based on best practices, but of course, council can make it as it would like to see.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It may sound strange that I might be speaking against a policy. There are a few things about this policy that bring me some concerns. The first is under nominations, one of the bullets says that nominations will be considered in a closed meeting of council in camera. For an award that's this important, I would actually expect it to be debated in open meeting, simply because it conveys particular specific legal permissions onto the recipient that are very unique, and I think those types of decisions should be made in public. The other is that the selection criteria that's available on page 1 of the policy, because of the nature of the award and the way it's set out in legislation being so general, I would be of the opinion that council should not restrict it further than the generality that is in the enabling legislation, because it is the type of honor for a great service. And a great service can be pretty much anything and should not be restricted by length of how long that service was or anything along that lines. I don't view this award as something that's given out every year and therefore we have to have applicants and determine whether they fit into it. I view this award as something where the community in general recognizes the need to recognize one of their own. And I think that all of the types of requirements that are in this policy are necessary because of the legislative requirement that the award be approved of by every single member in council, that it's unanimous. So those are my comments. Apart from that, I certainly appreciate the drafting and the submission of this for council's consideration. And it does basically reflect the legislation. I just feel that as the legislation is wide open, that there probably, in my opinion, isn't a need to restrict this award. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I was going to add some other stuff here, but I would just want to make a comment here regarding fellow councillor. I would, if it was me receiving that award and people were talking about my life in the public and somebody didn't like something I did and wanted to say it, you're kind of closed mouth here. And I would rather be discussed in the back room rather than be brought out and all my laundry out on the table. Sorry, it's just a weird analogy I'm using, but that's how I feel if it was in my, if I had those shoes on. So I'm just bringing that. Okay, so I do have a question. In one of the, it says person, honored, a person could receive, an individual could receive this award, but in the past, we had also an organization could receive an award. If an organization went way beyond the call of duty, there's nothing that allows that. It just says individual. So I'm just kind of curious to know, are we not going to include organizations that are involved in that? And do you have to be a Canadian citizen? Does it matter on these awards? Just thought I'd bring that forward.
Thank you. Danielle.
So I'll address the Canadian citizenship first. They don't necessarily have to be Canadian citizen, but in order to exercise the certain rights that are afforded, of course, being like a voting member of the municipality as one, and the ability to run for office as the other, they would have to be. Alternatively, you don't have to be a Canadian citizen under the group provision where you can award it to a unit of service. A military unit. It can also be awarded to another country's unit of service if council so deemed that. Of course, they wouldn't get the election provisions, but it can be done. And my understanding of the provision is that it is fairly limited for group awards to military service as opposed to community groups in general.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on the groups, I guess there's another mechanism for us. So, I mean, let's think ahead. So if the 2022-2023 Alberni Valley Bulldogs win the whole league and we want to recognize them, we can give them the key to the city as a group rather than each individual person is the freeman of the city. So just kind of throwing that out there.
Yep, that's a great point. Okay, other comments? Okay, I just wanted to echo Councillor Solda's comments on having the discussion in camera. Though I appreciate the comment about discussing it in openness because it is so important. I think we, for following continuity, I mean, we discuss committee appointments in camera because if somebody disagrees for a specific reason, there might be privacy with that reason that they're disagreeing. I think because this is so important, we need to make sure that every piece of pro or con is able to be properly debated. So I do think that the in-camera piece of the policy is really important. Councillor Solda.
And just one more thing too is we have done freemen of the city in the public. And there was, when we were all said and done, it was like, oh my God, I really wanted to discuss this more and really wanted to go in the back and have that discussion about who received and why they received it and is it the right move and stuff like that, but we couldn't do that, and we gave them the freedom of the city then, and yeah, so I just wanted to bring that forward.
Thank you. Okay, so there is a suggested motion here if someone would like to move it. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council approve the City of Port Alberni Freedom of the Municipality Policy 3002-2.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no final comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Opposed. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we have no bylaws. H, correspondence for action. We have one item, 2023 AGM and Convention Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Resolution Notice and Submission Process. Does anyone want to speak to this? I think we've got a pretty good understanding generally. Councillor Douglas, did you have a comment?
Excuse me, AVICC convention in advance of the deadline date of February 9th, 2023 at noon.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Patola, and I'd suggest we add this as an agenda item on our next agenda so that people can bring forward resolutions they would like to bring forward. Councillor Haggard.
That was going to be my question. Do we bring it forward to council first, or do we send it to Danielle first so she can bring it to council?
I think in the past what we've done is brought forward an idea, you know, kind of a framework of what we would like, and then if council supports that, then staff will take that and prep more of a resolution, recognizing that AVICC will amend them regardless, so it doesn't have to be a perfect resolution that goes forward. Okay, so if we add that to our next agenda item, or next agenda, we can have that discussion. Okay.
So the idea I was going to mention or bring up for discussion is sometimes in the past we've had sort of like a working group within councillors. You know, if somebody has a particular idea that they want to develop a resolution on, for example, the gated logging roads that we have around the community, different issues like that, and I'd be more than happy to sit down and we could, you know, have a little nucleus of a group and come up with some resolutions or bring forward and discuss them and refine them for the next meeting, if that's somewhere you want to go. Just an idea.
Okay. Okay. Seeing no other comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, no proclamations. We'll move on to correspondence for information. Danielle, if you want to just highlight what we've got here today.
Absolutely. So much of the correspondence received over the holidays, of course, was well wishes for the holiday season, as well as congratulations for council members in their recent elections. We also have certain appreciation posts for staff snow removal. And we also, as an addition, will have 2 items of correspondence from PASS. So I'll pull those up separately just for review here. So this first item from BC Housing regarding guests and the funding news for the for PASS, and the secondary correspondence to the residents regarding the same.
Thank you very much. Are there items councillors would like to speak to in the correspondence list? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just I'd like to see us, if we could, write a letter back to Mayor Mizutani-san from our sister city, City of Abashiri, and congratulations. Do we need a motion for that, or have
No,
you?
that's okay. We're actually already writing one.
I thought so. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, also, too, just really quickly, just expressing appreciation to our city crews for snow removal at Success Dyke. This isn't the first meeting since we've had all the snow, and I just want to say thank you very much to all of our city crews for all that they did, and to all our first responders as well for battling through all that through December.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to comment on item 1J1C, the letter from C. Casey regarding Westport Place Parks. I understand we will be having a delegation sometime in the future with regards to the situation there as it were. We've requested that already. I'm just wondering if, Madam Mayor, if the CAO or the CO could comment on if we have an expected date for that.
Absolutely. Tim?
Council, I'm not aware of a scheduled date for that delegation.
And I think important to note also, that's obviously an important piece of it, but Westport has lost 3 parks in the general neighborhood. So the Rainbow Gardens one, of course, which was intended to be replaced, the small one, and then the one right across the street on River Road was removed. Safety issues a couple of years ago. So I think Rainbow Gardens is a piece of that for sure, but there's probably a bigger conversation around park replacement in that neighborhood. So we can check in on the status of that delegation as a starting point. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On item J1E, the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative, I was wondering if that's something that we have plans to follow up on, or if there's any existing relationship there with that organization. It caught my eye and seemed interesting, something worthwhile to our community in our current place.
Tim, are you able to speak to that?
Madam Mayor, just looking at who it's been copied to, it hasn't been copied to anybody that would take action on that. And if council would like us to action it, re-engage with them, or bring you a report, we can do those.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion in that regard.
Yeah. Okay, so a motion to have a basic report, kind of familiarizing ourselves with this organization.
Yes, and whether or not it's something worthwhile to pursue.
Okay, so moved. Is there a seconder?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to report from in-camera then. We have one item, a release from in-camera, appointment of CAO and Director of Corporate Services. Danielle, do you want to just give a very brief overview of this?
Absolutely.
Since I realized we didn't introduce you at the beginning of this meeting.
For sure. So first off, I guess I'm Danielle Lurberg. I have been appointed the Director of Corporate Services for the City of Port Alberni. Following the council meeting on December 19th, we released the information regarding the further appointment of Tim Play to Chief Administrative Officer for an extended term to March 31st. And following the retirement of Twyla Slonsky, my appointment as corporate officer effective the 3rd of January.
Thank you very much, Danielle, for introducing yourself to the city. We're very happy to have you here. Moving on to council reports. Any items councillors would like to highlight? No, this is just releasing the motions that were made in camera, so no motion required there. Okay, council reports. Councillor Haggard.
Councillor Douglas wrote 10 wishes for Christmas, and one of them was ability for council to attend meetings by Zoom. And I do know that equipment was ordered, and some of it came and some of it didn't. Is there a status on when that's going to be arriving or happening, or do you know anything about that?
Unfortunately, we are still waiting for a couple components on some of those, so that is still kind of up in the air. As far as a specific date, I cannot nail that down for you, sorry.
So we're still waiting.
Yeah.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I'd like to bring on Zoom, and Councillor Haggard brought that up, so thank you very much. I'm glad we're working on that. Question period at council meetings, I feel, should be opened up to the online community. There's no reason why people shouldn't be able to watch this online if they're at work or occupied in another part of town or out of town, and text in a question that's relevant to our meeting. A simple way of doing that would be I could simply give my text number out, or council members could alternate before we work out an intricate bureaucratic system that might be more apt to replace that. Specific councillors be assigned to a specific area representation within the city. It's a very, very modified type of ward system where one councillor would be responsible for a certain geographical area, and it just help us get in touch with residents in different parts of the community. I'd like us to, in my words, light a fire under the much-needed new aquatic facility, working with the regional district, possibly proposing a parcel tax option, as done previously with our multiplex, and this would allow all users to pay their fair share in providing a state-of-the-art new pool for all. I'd like us to move forward with our exciting prospects on the Somas waterfront that the council the previous term did a fantastic job advancing, and work with our industrial partners, Sand Group and Catalyst, on a continuous waterfront boardwalk, while at the same time integrating a path from Victoria Quay up Roger Creek to Roger Creek Park and that trail system. I'd like us to earmark China Creek South, Cameron Shops and Link Mill for an industrial park area and eventual amalgamation with the city. As people may not be aware, that is China Creek. I'd like us to reawaken our beach area to share with our Seashot neighbors, and they have a lot of interest in this too, rekindle our waterfront recreational interest at the former plywood site, complete the process of decking our pier along with an offshore gazebo, reviving our polar dip, and reinventing other beach events. I'd like us to brighten up our Northport Mall area with street light power and agreements from local retailers, as they have indicated over the past several years, from what I understand, to put Christmas lights up in that area for us. I'd like to help provide a focus for lobbying with our provincial and federal governments for a medical detox facility and long-term recovery programs so that we can invest in our people who are struggling with substance use. And now that the Somas waterfront is starting to find legs, I'd like us to begin to focus on the APD lands to help create employment, skills, and educational opportunities for those who are having their jobs taken from them. Let us create employment and economic diversity once more from another extremely valuable waterfront property. And that's the 12 wishes of Christmas. I won't do this more than once a year, I promise. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you for that, Councillor Douglas. I do think it's important to note that APD is, though curtailed, is an active mill. So I think we just have to be somewhat cautious about talking about a company that still employs people in our community. Okay, any other items? Councillor Mealy.
Just really quickly, Madam Mayor, just more along the lines of community spirit. Just want to send congratulations out to our ADSS Armada boys basketball team for winning the Totem Tournament for the first time in a long time. The girls won last year. They came third this year. And to a Totem Spirit candidate, Jaden Blake, as well. So it was quite an exciting weekend for sports in general in Port Alberni. And so we just thought we'd try to recognize the teams that did do so well, and all the organizers as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Mealy. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apart from the usual business of City Council since our last meeting over the Christmas holidays, the one bright light of attendances that I made was at Madam Mayor's Christmas party for the councillors on City Council. And I wanted to mention that particularly, not because I enjoyed it, which I did, but because it was a significant event for a new council of the city to get together to learn each other's unique characteristics and strengths and come together as a team. Although I think we are a team that's not a blind team. I think we're a team that all has their particular interests and their particular strengths. And I think, though, that it was great to have that opportunity to learn how possible it will be to work together and the great things we can achieve. So hard to report to the public on a party, but it was a very important and effective time. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Patola. Councillor Haggard.
Are we allowed to comment on some of Councillor Douglas's wishes?
We can absolutely comment. I would just say a lot of this probably is more appropriate rather than in a council report as a part of strategic planning.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot of priorities that need to have council come together for a full discussion on.
Okay.
But you can absolutely
Oh, I was
comment
just,
on.
regarding the Aquatic Center, if you read the regional district agenda for Wednesday, the Aquatic Center is on there. They're going to form an advisory committee, so things are starting to progress. I just hope they're going to start to progress a little more quickly than they have been, but they are progressing, so that's great news. And I think if you're asking for people to send text messages to a counselor, I would say no, because we shouldn't be playing with our phone at a council meeting. However, I absolutely agree if we have like an email address and they could be sent to Danielle, and if she could look at that email and see if there's any questions for the community. I absolutely agree with a process like that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we actually had been discussing through COVID, because we were taking live questions through council@portalberni.ca. Through COVID, we were able to do that without amending our procedures bylaw, and now all it would take would be amending our procedures bylaw. So the other thing I wanted to just kind of note is that, because you mentioned a parcel tax is one of several financial models that have been considered for the regional district, and that the models that have been considered are all available in a public report as well. So there's pros and cons to all the models, and I don't think that the whole region will come to an easy consensus on how to move forward, but there's been a lot of work done on that project to date.
And if I may, thank you. It wasn't meant to be a full discussion of any sort. It was just the 12 wishes, but it was meant to stimulate conversation, which is what it's done. So thanks very much.
Okay, we'll move on to new business then. Item number 1, we've got authorized council registration for the 2023 BC Economic Summit. I assume we have councillors who would like to attend this. I'm not able to attend that conference. Councillor Haggard?
I was just going to say AVICC is on April 14th to 16th, which is right in the middle. I would have loved to have gone to this one, but I would have missed a day of AVICC and also the next conference. I was really interested, but then you would miss the last day or you miss AVICC. So maybe these organizations need to come together and space out their conferences so people who want to attend can attend. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone? Councillor Patola?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo Councillor Haggard's frustration with having to book more than one thing at a time, such as council meetings and other meetings and work requirements, and it is incredibly difficult, and I'd like to do everything. I would, though, like to represent Port Alberni City Council at the BC EAD conference. I'm very interested in economic development, and I think the city would prosper from that, and I'd invite other councillors who would be willing to also attend that meeting.
Yeah, I think there's definitely value in having someone at this conference, at least one councillor, and we don't need to have everyone at AVICC all the days necessarily. So I'm hearing interest from Councillor Patola and Councillor Solda, and I will move that Council authorize Councillor Patola and Councillor Solda to participate in the annual BC Economic Development Association's 2023 BC Economic Summit, and so on. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Dame. Okay, any final comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And item number 2, we've got authorized council registration again for the 2023 BC Council of Forest Industries Convention. I'm interested in attending this as specifically because of my role on the BC Forestry Council. Are there any other councillors who are interested in attending? Councillor Douglas. Yeah, I'm just waiting for people to put their hands up. Councillor Douglas, did you want to comment?
Well, yeah, I just noticed Councillor Haggard, you know, I'm not bent on it. If somebody else really wants to go, I wouldn't want to stand in their way, but I'm willing to go if needed.
Okay, Councillor Haggard?
Yeah, I was just going to say, just because I'm going to Truck Loggers next week, I thought this would be a really good tie-in together, but I just really hate to miss the AVICC too, but I think this is a really important convention to go to for our community.
Councillor Douglas, would you like to read the motion?
A motion that council authorize Mayor Minions and Councillor Douglas to attend the BC Council of Forest Industries Annual Convention taking place on April 12th to 14th, 2023 in Prince George, BC, with authorization to include reimbursement of expenses incurred as per city policy number P6-travel expense policy.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Patola. Councillor Neely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to note that the cost to the citizens of Port Alberni is $2,400 per registrant. So as much as I'd like to see two people, I would suggest only one, but that is one voice.
Just one additional note that my registration is complimentary. Yeah.
I take that back then.
But for clarity, there's still hotel costs for sure. So, but it's significantly less with my registration. Okay. Seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And we'll move on to other items of new business. So the first one we had was from Councillor Solda, streetlights.
So, Madam Mayor, some of the public have come up to me and said we have some issues regarding our lights, and I'm just kind of curious to know who changes our, and I'm talking about city street lights and the signals, and who do the public contact, and if there's an issue, and how do we go out and how do we change it? Just give us a little report so the public understands how the light system works. Some of them they feel are not in sync and with other lights, so I'm just kind of curious to know how it works.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, our Director of Engineering is across the hall. We'll bring him over to speak to this.
I'm going to actually ask that rather than asking our Director of Engineering to speak on the spot to a question he hasn't heard yet, I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate for Council to request a report so that we could get some written information on process rather than just kind of a one-off to this. Councillor Solda, would you like to make that a motion?
So I'll move that, Madam Mayor, to get a report from our engineer.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mealy.
With comment, I guess the one sorry, and then the question was, you know, who do the public contact in regards to lights and that? So in my experience, signs, lights, anything like that, the Public Works Yard is very inviting. They're very nice people down there. So if there's any concerns in the intermediate before the report, that the regular, good old common Port Alberni citizen can either contact the City Works Yard or just go on down and say hi. So they're good people down there. So.
Well, the biggest thing too is time frame of repairs.
For sure.
And
So
we'll
there's multiple questions in there for sure, but
I just
think
thought
that's an important
just to
comment.
address the right now, I see a light out, I see a sign down, City Works Yard, good people.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
That was great, thank you.
So we've got a motion on the floor. Seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Okay, and then we've got 3 notices of motion. Councillor Patola, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. These are in no particular order. So the first is picking up on the strategic planning, and I know we will be undertaking strategic planning shortly, but the motion would be for a report from the CAO's office, I suppose, regarding a list of the city's current concerns or issues, recommendations from the CAO's office as to their priorities, and then that's it, because that would then serve as a basis for our strategic planning to understand all the priorities. The reason I bring that up is because I find that it's very enlightening to come to meetings and learn about things that I never even knew were issues. So it'd be nice to, when we plan our priorities, to know basically what the whole playing field is. Again, keeping in in mind that we will be doing strategic planning shortly. My next notice of motion is to make a motion to immediately implement the model code of conduct produced by the working group on responsible conduct dated October 2022 in its basic form, and then have the matter set on the agenda no less than 1 year from now to add additional policies included in the code of conduct, including but not limited to enforcement and penalties. The reason for bringing that notice of motion to be discussed in the future is because of the statutory requirement that we do pass that within 6 months of our first meeting. I know that means probably 7.5 months from the date of the election, but I think it's something we should get moving on. And finally, I would like to make a notice to bring a motion that Council adopt a policy for the routine release of in-camera agendas, including supporting material, in a form that is similar to that set out in the City of Nanaimo policy number COU-194 for reference sake. I did have an opportunity to read a number of different municipalities' policies, certainly not all of them, and the Nanaimo one seems fairly in tune with what I believe should be in the policy, and I'll simply leave it at that. It's something that we can read and discuss in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those, and thanks for having a specific community as well. It definitely helps to have that as a starting point of something to work from, but more discussion at our next meeting. Okay, that's the end of new business, so we'll move on to question periods. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Mr. Kannegizer.
Good afternoon. Bob Kannegizer, 3909 Whittlestone Avenue. Question to council is, what is the current planning, thinking, and proposing for the routing of connecting the quays, Victoria Quay to Harbour Quay?
Thank you for the question. This council has not yet discussed that project. It will come to our strategic planning, which is starting next week, for consideration.
Okay.
Thanks. And Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, first, Happy New Year to everyone. Put my glasses on, it's getting older. Number one, it's something I brought up a number, maybe even 2-3 years ago, regarding question period and unfinished business. What happens at times, as part of the process where there was a policy written regarding how that should work, and what came out of that sometimes questions are asked at question periods, that it's not reasonable to expect an answer right there and then. That's fair enough, I understand that. Although I think since then, sometimes it's abused and questions can be answered at the time they're asked. However, the way it's working right now, if a person asks a question at the podium and there isn't an answer at that time, the response will come maybe 2 weeks later at the next meeting under unfinished business. Now, the person who asked the question hasn't got an opportunity to respond to the response to their question. And I think that's totally unfair, because you may not get, as I say, a response is not always an answer to questions. And so you're out of the picture now. And so at that point, when I brought it up last time, I suggested that maybe if a response to a question asked at question period under unfinished business, that opportunity should be given to the person, if they're in the audience, to respond to that. Or the other option, which would work just as well, is that the response should be given at question period at the next meeting, again allowing the person to respond. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. It didn't go anywhere last time. And so I'm asking council to consider this as an option in the future. And that one's off my list. Resolutions to the ABICC and the other one that just happened, that all these names get muddled in my head. Is there a process set up for the public to present to council what they think should be put forward at these meetings? in a timely fashion, so we could
Yep.
sometime present something together. It shouldn't just come from council, it should come from the general public as well as.
I think that's a great question. We don't have a formal process for that. Now, you could certainly bring under public input period a suggestion.
Yes.
What we typically do is take the topics that are relevant in the community at the time, or are our strategic initiatives for
Understand.
lobbying, and bring those forward. But I know that you've brought forward specific issues that have been brought to AVICC as a result. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. We don't have a formal mechanism for that.
So maybe another thing to put on your list. I'm sure the list is getting big. You brought up the West Park, and it surprises me because it's several years, and I remember there was a lot of people turned out to these meetings regarding losing their park to the extension of the senior care facility there. They promised that there would be a downsized park. The city talked about creating another one, and we're just talking about that now. Where did this fall through the holes? The commitment that both the facility out there and the city council has not fulfilled their promise in a timely fashion to the members of the public living at West Coast Park.
I think we'd be best to not speak on behalf of the society why the park is not done yet. But I know that there has been regular conversations. We do have a liaison on the board, and it is not dropped as a priority for the city. But we do recognize that there is still not a park, and in the meantime, 2 other parks have been lost from that neighborhood.
I know you can't speak for the facility, but the question should be asked why they did not follow through with their promise.
And we have made a motion to invite them as a delegation to specifically discuss this topic.
Okay.
So that was made about a month ago.
Thank you.
I do note that Councillor Mealy had a comment, I think, on your original piece around question period.
On the first one, yeah, just trying to think that out, and I totally agree that, you come here and ask a question, maybe we can't give you the answer right away. Maybe just a suggestion or a mechanism is, and I'll use an example. So, Mr. Anderson, you come today and you want to know how many stop signs were put up in the last 2 weeks. So it's obviously not something that we can just do right off the bat. However, the answer shouldn't take 2 weeks to get that to you. So maybe what we could do, and this is a suggestion, is we get that answer to you via email or however you do. It is noted on unfinished business that Mr. Anderson's question was answered via email on this date. It's on the agenda for the next meeting, so then you can actually be in attendance and understand and address it when we address it at that time. So
when you address it, whichever part of the agenda is, the opportunity is given to the person.
The first thing is, and if I may, Madam Mayor, the first thing is to get you the answer. That's what you're here for, and that's what we're here for, is to get you the answer to that question.
Keep in mind,
and not wait until 2 weeks for you to address it again.
Okay, and the only problem I have with that is, in my case anyway, I ask questions I think is relevant, that's just not to myself, but to the public.
No,
And
understandable.
I ask the questions here because I want the public to hear my concerns. And when you receive an email back in response, just asking the question.
I'll just
Right,
add,
but
I don't think that Councillor Mealy is suggesting we don't then bring that answer to the public. I think he's suggesting we put that on the agenda under unfinished business still, with a note that that information has been emailed to the person who asked the question. That would give a bit more of an opportunity for you to have the information sooner, for you to make a comment on it at public input period if you chose to, prior to us discussing it, etc. So I think just looking for solutions here.
Yep, that's all it is.
I would just add that I think we're not going to sort this out here today, and any specific changes are going to be changes to our procedures bylaw. Our procedures bylaw is something that we've already slated for review, and I think, Mr. Anderson, you've got some great points here. But we need to make sure that we think through the whole process around the procedures bylaw,
Okay.
and not look at one specific
We'll see where it
item.
goes, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. And the other one I'm going in, have you started the process for the searching for the CEO? Have you started the process?
Yes, we have.
And you,
And I believe is the posting out? Yes, the posting is live.
okay, fine. Thank you. No. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the public today? Okay, Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not intend to resolve the issue that Mr. Anderson presented today, but I'm just wondering, when we get to the point of reviewing our procedures bylaw, if there might be an opportunity to form a working group such as my friend Councillor Douglas suggested in his 12 wishes, and possibly involve community participants in that, so that there's a point of view from the public is represented as well as the point of view from council, and how procedures would be smoothest and most efficient.
Thank you. Great suggestion. Okay, with that, would somebody like to move adjournment?
Adjournment.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor
Second.
Mealy. On the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.